Public.com presents The Rundown, your daily market update in under 10 minutes. My name is Zaid Admani, and today is Wednesday, August 20th. In today's episode, we'll tell you why the AI hype train might be starting to lose some steam. We'll also recap earnings from Target, Lowe's, and TJ Maxx, and dig into why Palantir is riding a 5-day losing streak. Then stick around to the end of the show to find out the economic impact of the US Open tennis tournament. It's a lot more than I expected. We got a great show for you today. Let's go. Markets took a dive on Tuesday with the S&P 500 down 0.6% and the Nasdaq lost 1.5%. Now, this sell-off was kind of weird because more than 350 companies in the S&P 500 actually finished in the green yesterday. It was mostly tech stocks that got wrecked and dragged the entire market down with them. Some of the worst performing stocks yesterday include Palantir, which dropped more than 9%. Other big losers include Coinbase, Oracle, and Nvidia, which lost between 4 and 5%. So there seems to be a bit of a vibe shift from investors around the hot tech names, and I wonder if we might be starting to see the first cracks in the AI hype machine. Because, OpenAI's GPT-5 release from a couple weeks ago was underwhelming after being hyped as AGI for the past few months. And it probably doesn't help that Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI himself, is now saying that AI is a bubble. And then there was a report this week published by MIT saying that 95% of generative AI pilot programs at corporations are failing to deliver measurable impacts on P&L. So yeah, while all these AI tools are great, they're not really having an impact on the bottom line just yet. So we'll see if the hot tech names can recover from this sell-off. But either way, this makes Nvidia's earnings next week so critical. Now that there's some creeping doubt around the AI hype, if Nvidia's earnings come in even slightly soft, it could take more air out of the AI hype cycle that's been pushing the markets up for the last few months. So once again, everyone's entire portfolio depends on Nvidia delivering on earnings. They report 1 week from today on Wednesday, August 27th. That could be the moment that decides whether the markets keep flying or come crashing back to earth. We're obviously going to be watching that one closely, so make sure you guys are subscribed to the podcast to stay in the loop. Let's run through some headlines, starting with Target. Target reported earnings this morning, and on the surface, the results looked pretty good. The company beat estimates on revenue and profits while also sticking to its full-year outlook. But the reason that Target stock is getting crushed this morning is because their sales continue to drop. Revenues in Q2 came in at $25.2 billion, which is 1% less than Q2 of last year. And if you look at same-store sales, that dropped 1.9% compared to last year. In fact, Target has now reported negative same-store sales in 6 out of the last 9 quarters. And that's where the problem is. Target sales have basically been flat for the past 4 years, and that might be one reason why the stock is down 60% from its 2021 peak. Now, Target is trying to turn things around. They even announced a new CEO. Their current CEO, Brian Cornell, has been in charge since 2014. He's stepping down at the end of January, and he's going to be replaced by Michael Fidelki on February 1st. Now, Fidelki is a Target lifer. He's been working there for 20 years, starting as an intern back in 2003. Fidelki has been Target's COO and CFO, and now he's finally taken over the big chair. On the earnings call, he laid out his vision to make Target stylish again and use technology to run things more efficiently. But investors weren't buying his pump-up speech. Target stock is down more than 10% this morning at the time of this recording. I think investors were hoping for an outside hire to come into Target to provide a fresh perspective. Fidelki's been there for 20 years, so he's going to have a lot of pressure from investors to turn things around. I do feel like Target is losing their special sauce that made them different from other retailers like Walmart. Like, just looking at my wife, I feel like she orders more stuff from Walmart these days than she does Target. I mean, that should have been an immediate red flag for me for Target stock once I saw more Walmart packages at my door. Let's shift gears and talk about chips. On Monday's episode, we talked about how the Trump administration was in talks to take a 10% stake in Intel. Well, they might not stop there. According to a new report from Reuters, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick is exploring taking equity stakes in other chip makers too, including Micron, TSMC, and Samsung. Now, his idea is to swap out the big grants these companies were promised under the CHIPS Act and instead convert that into equity. Now, quick refresher here, the CHIPS Act was signed back in 2022 by President Biden with the goal of boosting U.S. semiconductor manufacturing. The original plan was to hand out grants to these chip makers so they would build more chip factories on U.S. soil. But Howard Howard Lutnick wants to change that a bit. He doesn't want to give this money away for free to these chip makers without the taxpayer owning a piece of the company and potentially seeing a return on that investment. It's an unconventional approach, but not really out of character for this administration. Remember, a couple months ago, the Pentagon took a stake in MP Materials, and I think this administration is trying to do the same thing with the CHIPS Act. Most of the $52 billion from the CHIPS Act hasn't been handed out yet, and it's overseen by the Commerce Department, so Secretary Lutnick has some leverage here. Now, of course, this kind of government involvement makes companies nervous, especially foreign companies. A US stake in a foreign company like TSMC or Samsung would be unprecedented. Still, it seems like President Trump and Secretary Lutnick are sold on the idea, so don't be surprised if more of these kind of deals are announced soon. Let's talk about some stocks making moves today. Lowe's shares are up this morning after the home improvement retailer beat earnings and doubled down on catering to professionals and contractors. The company announced an $8.8 billion acquisition of Foundation Building Materials, which is a distributor that supplies drywall, ceiling systems, and all the stuff that pros use on job sites. We heard a similar strategy from Home Depot in their earnings call earlier this week. Professional contractors seem to be a more consistent source of business compared to DIYers. Investors seem to love this move by Lowe's, and shares are up more than 3% this morning at the time of this recording. Let's stick with the winners here and talk about TJ Maxx. Their earnings also came in strong, beating expectations across the board. The company also raised its full-year guidance, assuming that tariffs stay about where they are now. TJ Maxx is less sensitive to tariffs compared to other retailers because they purchase excess merchandise from brands usually after the item has already been imported into the US. So TJ Maxx isn't the one paying the tariffs. Shares of TJ Maxx are up more than 4% this morning at the time of this recording. Now, on the flip side, we got to talk about Palantir because they continue to have a rough few days. The stock has been on a 5-day losing streak, and it's looking like it's going to be 6 after short seller Citron Research called the company heavily overvalued. Citron points out that Palantir trades at a much higher sales multiple than even OpenAI, which, kind of puts things into perspective here. On top of that, insiders at Palantir have been dumping shares over the last 12 months, including CEO Alex Karp, who sold roughly $2 billion worth of shares in the last 2 years. Palantir shares are down more than 5% this morning, and the stock has shed about 20% of its value since August 12th. Let's wrap the show with the fun fact. The US Open tennis tournament kicks off this week in Queens, and the tournament is projected to bring in over $1.2 billion in economic impact to the New York area during the 3-week period. That is more than the projected economic impact for the entire baseball season of the New York Yankees and Mets combined. So that's kind of wild that the US Open has a bigger economic impact in 3 weeks than the Mets and Yankees do all season combined. By the way, the US Open is an incredible tournament. I've been there a few times now. It might be the best sports tournament that I've ever been to. So if you guys live near the New York area or are going to be in New York during the tournament, highly recommend going there for at least one day. You don't even have to be a big tennis fan. It's just a great vibe, and it has great food, and the atmosphere is great. In fact, I feel like the tournament has now become more known for their trendy cocktails than the actual tennis. The Honeydews drink goes pretty viral every year on social media. It's a vodka drink that includes honeydew melon in the shape of tennis balls, and it's a big moneymaker for the tournament, bringing in around $13 million in sales last year at $23 a cup. And this year, there's going to be a new addition to the cocktail roster. They're calling it the Watermelon Slice, and is going to sell for $39 a glass. The drink includes Moet Chandon, watermelon juice, elderflower liquor, and lime with a watermelon slice garnish. That is a little too fancy for my taste, but if some of you guys end up going to the US Open, try it out. Let me know if it's worth the $39 price tag. I am so tempted to fly to New York this weekend and attend the tournament for a few days. Just gotta convince the wife. Maybe I can bill it as a business trip, Honey, we gotta record the rundown at the US Open. We might get Carlos Alcaraz on. Well, all right, guys, that's the rundown for today. Hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. If you did, and you have like 6 extra seconds, consider giving us a 5-star rating on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you are listening or watching on Spotify or YouTube, consider leaving us a comment. Let us know what you think about the US Open, if you plan on going this year or if you've been before in the past. All that engagement really does help us out, and it helps other people find the show. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching. Shout out to Mike and Connor for all the help behind the scenes. And we'll see you guys back here tomorrow.